Okay, number one, let's just start with some like a general disclaimer. We know there are so many videos out there of people that make videos like this and throw us in the pot. But so first off, what's our legitimacy? What is our veracity for being able to say any of this stuff? Well, we have been at UCLA for 3 years and we're getting ready to apply to medical school. We've seen a lot of people get involved in the things that we're going to talk about. We've heard about it and we ourselves have gotten involved with it. We've sat in on workshops and put on workshops for medical school preparation. We know what they're looking for. We know what they're asking for. So this is a general guide. People out there will have way more in-depth videos on these concepts and what we're gonna mention. So you can go consult those after you figure out what you should do.
So first thing that I kind of want to go over is mentorships/internships. So I'll talk about the mentorship part. I think every school or most schools do have like a list of like alumni of like mentors. For us, it would be UCLA 1, and that's where I found like my mentor, who happens to be a vascular surgeon. And you can find all sorts of cool people on there. It doesn't actually like, you don't have to be the surgeon itself. It could be like med students too.
Right. Like what are some of the opportunities you got?
So for instance, through the vascular surgeon, I was able to go ahead and shadow him. I was able to, get a kind of like a clinical research position, and even like I get to go on retreats and even learn about a lot of like the field.
Yeah, totally. So in terms of an internship, one thing that you should really get in touch with is your department counselors. And if they have a newsletter, such as I'm in the neuroscience major, so my department counselors have a newsletter that they send out every single week that is fraught with opportunities. I was actually able to find an internship through that I applied to. And now I'm actually under the guidance of a spinal neurosurgeon in San Diego, and I'm part of his internship clinic where I help out with clinical clerical work. So I think it's really important to look for an internship opportunity. They're definitely out there. Just kind of look for one that's probably in your field or something that's going to contribute to your overall focus that you're trying to do it in your pre-med path.
The next thing that we want to talk about is research.
All right, so we're in my lab right now, but essentially, as a pre-med, you always hear that you have to get into research, and research is extremely important. And, honestly, I agree. Like I can't say all pre-meds, but most pre-meds do attend some sort of lab or research program, either a wet or a dry lab. So essentially, a dry lab is when you don't actually have to go anywhere. It's mostly like database online, and you just enter data and you analyze information about like a certain topic. Me, for instance, I'm in a I'm in a wet lab, and this is it right here. This is located in Jules Stein by UCLA, and we work on like basically anything that deals with the eyes.
What are you doing, you clown? You put on some PPE. There we go. Okay. Wait. Bro, are you analyzing dust?
Honestly, I think one of the big stigmas around research is that it's like very, complicated, and it's hard to get into.
Right.
And everybody stresses about getting into one in the beginning, but I think I'm here to tell you that it's honestly not as difficult as you might think. Like, yeah, you'll have to send a bunch of emails like sometimes, or maybe you have to contact a lot of people, but there are so many programs. There's an undergraduate research center. There's a
biomedical research minor that helps you get into research.
It just guarantees you research. And even just knowing somebody that's in the lab, you can ask and get an interview that way too.
Yeah. And I mean, in my case, I did the cold emailing route, but I usually tell people cold emailing doesn't have to actually be so cold. You can kind of warm it up with how you present yourself. And typically every email is just going to consist of a greeting, just a statement as to why you're interested, your CV and or resume, and then times that you're available for an interview. And then from there you're set.
All right. And then next thing we want to talk about is like getting into clubs and organizations. So I would say, honestly, personally, I don't think clubs and organizations are like the biggest part of being a pre-med, or something that you should focus on. Like there's at a school, at a college, there are like, you know, countless numbers of clubs, and it doesn't actually have to be science related either. It just has to be like part of a community that you want to be in, and as a result you would want to be like a leader in for instance.
Oh yeah. So for instance, like I said, I'm a neuroscience major. So when I showed up at UCLA, I wanted to get everything involved. I want to get involved with everything that had to do with neuroscience. So I joined the Neuroscience Undergraduate Society. I helped charter the Neuroscience Honor Society, and I went from being just a member to an intern to vice president, now president of the Neuroscience Undergraduate Society. So that's just something that I'm very passionate about, and I'm able to show leadership in. So like Gary said, clubs definitely are not everything. You can go through high school, or not high school, you can go through college without getting involved in clubs, but it definitely does help promote like your story, like a theme of kind of what you've been interested in, and show leadership.
And just to clarify, it is great to hold a position, but it's not like a requirement.
Yeah, it's not a requirement. Yeah. Definitely not.
But all of that also leads into our next topic, or I guess our next point, which is having a theme as like, you know, as a person, as a pre-med. And I think a lot of people can agree that it is generally pretty important to have a theme or have some sort of story as to, you know, why you are like what you are, why you do what you do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, ultimately, when it comes down to applying, you will be asked questions discussing what was the most interesting experience you had, the most meaningful volunteer experience. Those types of questions will come up on personal statement, which we'll talk about in a bit, and also interviews as well. We have yet to actually experience those things because obviously we haven't applied to medical school yet, but for a fact, those will be asked every time, and you can just easily look that up online. They want to see why you did what you did. Of course, you can put in volunteer hours, but if they're spread out among a whole bunch of different things, that can show, yes, diversity, but it's also, there should be some overlap to show that, okay, you didn't just put in hours, but you kind of put in hours for things that developed you as a person and forwarded your mission to provide health to people who need it.
Which brings us to the next one, which is I think it's something that's like more of a requirement type based thing, which is clinical experience. And that can come in like many sorts of different activities, right?
Okay, so if your school, well, luckily UCLA is connected to a hospital, which as you can see right there, #1 in California and top 3 in the nation. Anyways, if your university is connected to a hospital, luckily like ours is, well, then do not be afraid to reach out to them for any opportunities. For instance, Gary, who's behind the camera, and I, during our first year, we actually were general volunteers. So we were able to push discharge patients to their location in the wheelchairs, and we were able to guide them, and that was just one of the things you could do as a general volunteer. There's another one called Care Extenders, which is a little bit more specific, and you're able to actually run through the different departments at the hospital itself. And also, do not be afraid to reach out to the physicians, which you can all find usually on the website of the hospital. So for instance, I was interested in shadowing a neurosurgeon, so I emailed that hospital right there, UCLA Health, and I looked up all the neurosurgeons online and I found them. So then I emailed those neurosurgeons, and I actually couldn't find the email of one of them. So I found his Instagram. So I DM'd him on Instagram, and then I was actually able to get a response from him. And then he sent me his phone number, told us to hop on a call. We hopped on a call. We talked for like 40 minutes. And then he gave me a lab position. And then now I'm supposed to shadow him next week. So you never know what can happen. All you have to do is just reach out, and don't be afraid to. They want to help out undergraduates. So reach out for volunteer opportunities and shadowing.
On top of that, you could, find a job that really, I guess, solidifies clinical experience and make sure that you have I guess proper interaction, if that makes sense. And something like that would be like being a medical scribe or EMT. Right. And even then, those required trainings, and you can do those during like the summer or whenever you need to have some free time throughout the school year. But again, it's not a necessity, but it can be something that can boost your application and separate you from the crowd.
Yeah, one of our roommates last year, he is an EMT, and he has some pretty neat stories about patient interactions and patient experiences and encounters, because he would show up on scene and he would have to provide health to people who needed it immediately, and that was pretty neat. And that's definitely clinical experience, being able to throw yourself right into being able to provide health to patients, because most of your undergraduate experience will be very hands-off. I mean, well, it's mostly just learning and leadership and research, but usually we won't be able to actually bring the health to patients. But I think something like being an EMT can definitely provide you with that. Again, like Gary says, it's not a requirement.
And the next thing, arguably probably the most important to being like a pre-med, are your grades. And despite everything else that we talked about so far, the main thing that you should focus on is making sure your grades are on point.
That's just how it is.
Honestly, from everything I've heard, no matter how great of a applicant you are or how great of a person you are, if you don't have the grades to back it up, then they might not even look at you in the first place.
Yeah.
And of course, there is a chance that they will anyways, but grades are usually like the first initial screening in finding like an applicant.
Yeah, totally. And I'm sure there's a filtering process that goes through seeing which GPA that comes through, and then from there they kind of make a decision. Yeah, and then of course your MCAT score. Typically, that's going to vary based on the average MCAT score, based on what university you want to apply to. But that is GPA and MCAT are like your numerical values that you have to be on top of, and your GPA you have to maintain from the start of your freshman year, because that can come around and bite you. If you mess up, that is just forever there. So
yeah, but honestly, even that being said, it's not to scare anyone,
right?
Because I think for both of us, we both messed up like pretty harshly in the beginning, and it's not like you can't recover from it at all. You don't have to have a perfect GPA score. In fact, I've heard having a perfect GPA score is like, it's kind of actually frowned upon.
Nerd.
But like, it's more so like, what typically those that do have a perfect one, it kind of shows like they're not, they don't do much outside of like just studies. And of course there are cases where there are, and these people are insane, and props to them.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's also, there's people that just only do that. That being said, grades and MCAT, they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
If one's high, the other could be a little lower, but as everybody understands, it's a sort of balance. And I guess lastly, we just want to go over like one of the last requirements and one of the last important points, your personal statement. And this goes kind of back to like your having a theme or a story. If you have that, your personal statement will be like, I guess, much easier to kind of explain and write out about. But like, essentially, you just have to kind of say like about who you are, and have something like that kind of like stands out just a little bit. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. You could be somebody like, you could be a chef guy,
Yeah. Actually, that's funny, because one thing, the president a couple years ago for the Neuroscience Undergraduate Society, she told us that in her interview, she always got asked about something that was very quirky about her, and she was a beekeeper. She had this program where she would help keep bees, I guess that's how you'd say it. So that was something that really stood out, and that was just something that she was really passionate about, and she was able to write about. And mostly, if you look up a university online or a medical school, you can find the questions that they're expected to ask. And if you get an idea of what they're asking when you're a freshman in college or first year, that's huge, because you have so much time to prepare a tailored story. For that question. And of course, that question might not exactly be asked, but it's something that's going to revolve around that theme, definitely.
Yeah. So like, just have something about yourself that like you feel like could make you stand out from the crowd. Otherwise, think of it from like an admissions board like perspective. Like, there's so many applicants out there,
thousands.
You just gotta have just something small to remember you by.
Yeah, you can be like a taxidermist. You can stuff animals that are dead.
And whether or not if like these are all like points that you gotta like make sure you knock down, we don't know. And if we did, we'd be in med school already. Yeah. But that being said, it's not like what we're saying is just like BS. So just give it some thought. And there's nothing really much else to it.
Yeah. And to give a very quick summary, it was mentorship, internship, research, clubs or organizations, clinical experience, and then pretty much just having a theme to prepare you for your personal statement. So that's pretty much the main stuff that we cover. Oh, and then also, of course, your grades in MCAT.
Yeah, and there you go. Hey, you're practically a doctor now.